Welcome back. While with record high unemployment, networking seems to be the best way to actually find opportunities. So according to Youth Capital's research, 6 in 10 young people have found earning and learning opportunities through someone they knew.
The research group is now spearheading the hashtag Stand Up for Youth campaign. It's aimed at urging South Africans to create social connections for young people. Let's unpack this further with project lead at Youth Capital, Kristal Duncan-Williams. A very good morning to you, Kristal. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, this is something that I think has become age-old. You know, if you want to really get into a certain space, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. How important is that now becoming in society when you realize that what you know, where I'm going to give you an example of having a doctorate or having a master's degree or such things, still finds you sitting at home for a very long period of time. But when you know somebody and all you have is a matric certificate, you could find yourself in positions that you would never have imagined. How important is it to essentially unpack that, who you know as opposed to what you know?
Thanks, Marina. I think in South Africa, it's really critical. You know, apartheid did a really great job of segregating us, and that segregation continues, both spatially and in terms of access to resources. So I think if we all look at our work histories, those of us who are employed, we got where we are because, exactly as you say, because of who we knew. And what we know obviously helps us to a degree, but if you don't even know about an opportunity, you can't apply for that opportunity. And it's not even about knowing about work opportunities. Young people, you know, a lot of young people in this country are sitting at home in households where nobody is employed. You know, how to show up for a work interview, what to put on your CV, how to figure out how to cobble together a career from the experiences and the skills and the talents that you have. These are things that a lot of young South Africans just don't have knowledge of. And so, you know, what we're saying at Youth Capital is expand your networks, because through expanding your networks, you're also giving young people access to resources they wouldn't otherwise have had. And we're not just talking financial here, as I say, we're speaking about knowledge. If you think about a platform like LinkedIn, you know, the idea is that you can connect with people, but your first connections to people open up your door for your second connection and your third connection. And that's how it works in the real world as well. And young South Africans, the majority of them, are just disconnected from even that first level of connection that can open up doors for them. You know, there was a study that came out last year from the States. It was a really powerful study where they looked at literally millions of people on Facebook in the United States and showed that whether you are living in a poor community and then make friends with people who are wealthier than you, it really affects your upward mobility. And so just having friends who are wealthier than you opens up doors, and you look at over time, income potential and income earnings of poor people really increase when they make friends with people who are wealthier than them.
Kristal, I want us to speak a little bit about that, because that speaks significantly to something called social capital. Now, social capital in the South African context, it was not privy to black Africans. Social capital was limited to white people, right? People of color, right, non-white people, have never really had a moment of social capital, simply because a lot of them are the first. I'm the first one to get educated in my family. I'm the first one to go to university. I'm the first one to actually have a paying job, a 9 to 5. I'm the first one to buy a car. So in that essence, it means that there is no social capital that is circulating amongst certain racial groups in this country, or maybe we should say most racial groups that are non-white, right? And therein lies the big problem, is that we're looking for people that are wealthier than us, but how many black Africans have got access to a wealthy uncle or a wealthy aunt, or an aunt that runs a business, or a sister, an older sister that runs a business? A lot of times these young people who we are wanting to have access do not even know somebody who is wealthier than them, because most of the time the environment that they come from, it means mom, dad, uncle, aunt, they are all unemployed, and I'm the beacon of hope. So then how then do we start reaching beyond those borders? Because in expanding your social capital means even crossing racial boundaries. And crossing racial boundaries is what a lot of young people don't even know how to do. So how do we practically implement something which is a fantastic idea, but in the South African context, it's very difficult if we look at the dynamics of race and the dynamics of privilege in the country?
For sure, Faith. I think you've laid out the context we find ourselves in perfectly. What we really need is, we need to create layers in society that force us to interact with people who are unlike us, like you say, race, class, and so there are multiple layers at which this can be done. We've seen examples across the country with partnerships with schools, private or former Model C schools partnering with less resource schools and making a buddy system, and it's not just for the learners. Teachers are learning from each other. There's sharing of resources. So I think that intentional pairing up of those who are under-resourced with schools that are more resourced, and then opens up the networks of the learners as well as the teachers and the parents at those schools. Also things like we've seen open streets, which unfortunately hasn't happened since COVID, but where there are events in township areas where, like you say, wouldn't find a wealthy, typically white person engaging in areas like that, but encouraging people to go into spaces where they wouldn't otherwise be. So these are some of the big big events we can do. Marathons that across different geographical areas in a city. I've seen that in Cape Town, where I'm based, can really encourage people to experience a place that they wouldn't otherwise have been. So I think these are some of the bigger things that can happen. But if you look at the Stand Up campaign, we're saying to South Africans that you can start small, right? Through your workplaces, through the people you interact with, the person that cleans your office. Ask people, get to know people. We're all human at the end of the day, and I think we're still living with all this racial segregation for very good reason. But I think if we just look for what are the common things that we can maybe have a conversation about. We all want a better South Africa. It's better for all of us if young people are employed, right? We all want that. So what is something we can do as average South Africans? And this is somewhere we can start. The other things we speak about are huge things that government or the private sector need to do. But just connecting with a young person who's unlike you, not from your area, not from your racial class or your financial class, can really make a difference. And so let's think about starting there and practically what that can look like.
Kristal, our time is up, but if I could just squeeze in one more question, if you can briefly just let us know. I'm going to hook on that question that Faith was asking about the first one to do this, the first one to do that, and I'm going to look at it from especially our kinds of people, black people, whereas usually we are the ones who are first to do anything, right? And sometimes the problem is you want to be the first and the only. Then you become a gatekeeper. So you want to be the only one in that circle. And I know you're saying that, the important thing to essentially combat unemployment would be, to have that social connection and to have that, that social capital and spread it among those that very well are not as privileged as you would have been to get into that space. How then do you combat gatekeeping? How then do you combat people that want to actually be the first and the only? Because that too is one of the plagues of unemployment.
Yeah, I think you make such a good point, Marina. And I think we just need to land it with people that, yes, unemployment is a problem and there aren't jobs for everyone. Let's be honest about that. But connecting with a young person is not going to detract from your success. Helping a young person, write their LinkedIn profile, telling a young person about, looking at their business plan. Their business plan, might not be the same business that you're running. If somebody wants to go and study, they're going to be studying for years, and you're worried about holding on to, what's yours. You could be doing something else by the time that person completes their studies. I think we need to realize there's space in the world for each of us. And if we look at, as you say, other families, white families, where there are legacies of people who have gone and studied and started businesses or been wealthy, and they've managed it fine. So I think for the rest of us, those of us people of color who are the first, as you say, the first one to go to university, the first one to, buy a house or do all these things, that there can be space for all of us. And if we want this country to thrive, and I think we all do, and we're in a terrible place, then this is one way we can each do our bit. And so just to say, look out for the Stand Up campaign at youthcapital.co.za or Youth Capital SA on all our social media. Sign up for the campaign. We're going to be launching it in the lead up to Youth Month, and you'll be getting very clear instructions with how you can start to do all of this in your own space.